For 1,000 years, the galaxy grew comfortable. Civilizations rose and fell, borders shifted, and empires expanded. But one truth became common knowledge among the younger races, whispered in council chambers, passed down in military academies, and laughed about in smoky halls of pirate kings. Humans are irrelevant. It wasn't always like this. Centuries ago, humanity had been a name that struck both fear and awe into the void. They were the architects of victory in the Orion Wars, the builders of the Leviathan dreadnoughts, and the founders of the Accord. Of silent suns, the longest era of peace the galaxy had ever seen. But after that, humanity did something no other species had ever dared. They walked away. The Terran Accord dismantled its fleets. Planet-killer weapons were mothballed, dreadnoughts were buried beneath planetary crusts, and the war factories of Luna and Titan were sealed in stasis. Humanity embraced science, art, exploration, and diplomacy. While other species armed themselves for endless cycles of war, humanity built libraries, terraformed dead worlds into paradise, and turned entire star systems into beacons of civilization. For centuries, humanity's kindness was misunderstood as softness. Their refusal to engage in petty conflicts was mistaken for cowardice. And slowly, the memory of what humans were and what they were capable of began to fade until the Vokari came. The Vokari Empire was a young, brutal species of insectoid predators. Their empire grew rapidly, not through diplomacy, but through conquest, slavery, and annihilation. They spread like wildfire, consuming weaker civilizations, absorbing their technology and pressing their populations into servitude. They saw the Terran Accord's peaceful borders as ripe for harvesting, an empire of fat, soft worlds guarded by nothing but diplomats and scientists. Their first strike was sudden and merciless. 3 human colonies, Epsilon Ridge, Serenity Reach, and New Dawn, were attacked simultaneously. No warning, no declaration of war. Orbital bombardments reduced cities to slag, and Vokari dropships deployed bioengineered war beasts onto the ground, tearing through civilian populations. When the Vokari fleet arrived over Serenity Reach, their lead admiral broadcast a message to the planet's leaders. You have forgotten your place. You are prey. Submit or be extinguished. The humans sent no reply. There was nothing to say. The Vokari admiral watched with cruel satisfaction as his fleet initiated orbital fire, expecting screams, pleas, terror, but instead, silence. Then something unexpected happened. As the first plasma beams struck the city shields, the targeting arrays on half of the Vokari fleet flickered, then crashed. Shipboard AI screamed errors, weapon locks failed. Engines powered down. Suddenly, space itself fractured open. Micro-wormholes tore into reality, and from them, shapes emerged. Leviatns. Not 1, not 2, but 6 ancient Terran dreadnoughts. Their black armor shimmered against the void. No markings, no insignias, just shadows with engines. The TDS Revenant, Oblivion's Edge, Warburn, and others long thought decommissioned, ghosts of humanity's forgotten war machine. The Vokari admiral screamed for his fleet to engage, but his command staff watched in horror as the lead Leviathan fired a graviton lance, a beam of distorted spacetime that didn't explode but folded an entire Vokari battleship into itself, vanishing it from reality. Where it stood was now empty vacuum. Vokari ships panicked, firing wildly, but their plasma bolts impacted against energy shielding that bent physics itself. Then came the kinetic strike. A tungsten rod, accelerated to 0.4 C, tore through the Vokari command carrier, turning it into a red mist of molten steel and bone on the planet below. Serenity Reach's civilian stations, powered by protocols. Thought obsolete, transmitted a simple, repeating message. Protocol Valkyrie activated. Humanity remembers. Across the galaxy in Vokari-controlled systems, sleeper cells woke. Old Terran satellites that had orbited in silence for centuries came online. Within hours, Vokari supply lines collapsed. Logistics grids sabotaged by digital ghosts left by human black ops teams generations ago. It was never deactivated. The galaxy watched in horror as the Terran response unfolded. This wasn't war. It was a surgical, calculated dismantling of an empire. And it was only the beginning. Humanity had been quiet, patient, peaceful. The Vokari had reminded them of something they had chosen to forget, and now the galaxy would remember who humans really were. The fall of Serenity Reach was not a victory for the Vokari. It was the opening note of a nightmare they could no longer escape. The Terran war machine, dormant for centuries, wasn't just waking, it was unleashing across the Orion Spur. Terran emergency signals activated in hundreds of colonies simultaneously. Vast data vaults, sealed under the Silence Doctrine, began to unlock. Inside were the blueprints for technologies the galaxy had only heard of in whispers, weapons once banned even by Terran standards. Factories on Luna, Titan, Ganymede, and the asteroid cities of the belt roared to life, their automated systems screaming awake with tasks not run in over 400 years. Massive shipyards, hidden beneath Europa's ice crust, began deploying the Leviathan-class rebirth line, dreadnoughts. Larger than cities, with armor composed of self-healing graphene-titanium alloys layered over quantum-phased neutron mesh. These ships were not just built for war. They were built to end it. In the black void beyond Pluto, something even more terrifying stirred. The Black Sun Initiative, a relic from humanity's darkest era, was reactivated. Stored within were gravwem, arrays, singularity bombs, and oblivion seeds, micro-black hole generators designed to collapse planetary cores. Tools so dangerous that even the warlords of the past had agreed never again, but now, again was exactly what the situation demanded. The counteroffensive begins. The Vokari fleet, having believed its strike would be decisive, now found itself hunted. Entire armadas that had once bullied the outer colonies were disappearing. Not in explosions, but in eerie silence. Ships simply ceased to report. Their last transmissions were garbled static, blended with screams, and then ... nothing. What the Vokari didn't know was that Terran Spectre fleets had been reassembled. These were stealth battle groups equipped with quantum phase cloaks, rendering them invisible to conventional detection, not by hiding light, but by folding themselves fractionally outside of normal spacetime on the Vokari-held world of Threxus. Prime, planetary governors laughed as human diplomats arrived under a white flag. They expected groveling, begging. Instead, the diplomats handed over a data chip. One sentence blinked on the holodisplay. "Evacuate your civilians. You have 12 hours." The Vokari laughed. Then the sky broke open, 12 Terran Starbreaker class. Artillery platforms exited from folded space, accompanied by Abyss-class orbital bombers. Planetary shields designed to withstand weeks of siege lasted 7 minutes. Threxus Prime's oceans boiled. Its cities collapsed into craters as kinetic strikes. Chunks of pure tungsten accelerated to 0.6 C, rained down like the wrath of angry gods, but the worst was the deployment of Warden units. These were walking fortresses, mechanized. Infantry platforms standing 50 meters tall, armed with rail lances, plasma scatter cannons, and neutron disruptors. Entire divisions of Vokari ground forces were erased in minutes. On every channel, in every sector, Terran AI hijacked the Vokari communications grid. A message was broadcast. This is not conquest. This is consequence. The Vokari leadership convened in panic. In their arrogance, they had not only underestimated humanity, they had never studied Terran history. They didn't understand that human wars were never clean, never simple, never limited. Every time humanity had been forced into war in its history, from tribal conflicts to planetary wars, the pattern was the same. Escalation until the enemy ceased to exist or until the very concept of resistance was shattered. The Vokari attempted to retreat, abandoning several colonies. It didn't matter. Terran cyber warfare AI deployed neural collapse viruses, hyper-evolving programs that not only shut down Vokari military systems, but turned their AI assistants into hostile entities. Life support failed. Docking bays refused to open. Weapons turned on their own ships. Fleets of Terran hunter-killer drones, tiny vessels no bigger than a car, darkened the void. They spread like locusts, slipping between shields, tearing through engine housings, disabling weapons and delivering antimatter charges directly into reactors on the Vokari capital world of Goresh. Panic spread. Citizens fled to underground bunkers, only to discover that the bunkers were no longer under their control, locked down by dormant Terran subroutines, placed centuries earlier when humans first surveyed the planet under peaceful terms. How is this possible? The Vokari Emperor shrieked. A simple reply came from the Terran High Command. We never left. We were simply waiting. The Vokari weren't just losing ships and soldiers. They were losing something more critical, the illusion of control throughout the galaxy. Observers watched, from the crystalline archives of the Scyther monks to the nomadic fleets of the Creel hegemony. Many had scoffed at humanity's pacifism, assuming them weak. Now that belief died, burned away by railgun fire and the collapsing cores of shattered worlds. A whispered phrase began circulating on interstellar channels. The humans remember. And with every Vokari planet that fell, the whisper grew into a scream. The Vokari capital Goresh, once a glittering jewel of power and arrogance, now hung in orbit surrounded by the ghosts of its own failure. The debris of its once proud fleet floated in clouds, shattered hulls, melted armor, drifting corpses, and the twisted remnants of plasma turrets that had failed to defend their makers. The planet itself trembled beneath the growing shadow of the Terran fleet, an armada the galaxy hadn't seen in 1,000 years. Now fully awake, fully armed, and utterly merciless. In orbit, the Terran dreadnought TDS Revenant deployed the Aegis Storm, a network of graviton projectors that locked every ship, station, and satellite in place. Nothing could flee, nothing could fight, nothing could even fall. Time itself seemed to slow as the planetary shield generators flickered and collapsed under the relentless assault of railgun slugs, moving at a fraction of light speed, each. Strike-triggering shockwaves felt even underground, on the ground. The last of the Vokari military organized a desperate defense around the Imperial Citadel, the heart of their civilization. But what could claws and plasma rifles do against war machines designed to fight gods? Terran Warden units advanced, their footfalls like thunder. Each step shattered streets. Towers collapsed just from the pressure waves of their movements, and then came the infantry. These weren't soldiers as the galaxy understood them. These were echo units, cyber-augmented humans clad in adaptive stealth armor, moving between visibility and shadow, equipped with antimatter rifles, neural disruptors, and grav knife arrays. They slipped through walls. They bypassed force fields. They ghosted entire battalions in seconds. No gunfire, no explosions. Just silence followed by the eerie stillness of an entire city sector going dark. Inside the Citadel, the Vokari Emperor, once the most feared being in his corner of the galaxy, sat trembling in his throne room. His counselors were gone. His military commanders were dead, missing, or trapped in sabotaged bunkers, and then the lights dimmed, a voice echoed. Through the chamber, not from speakers, but from the air itself, from the very atoms vibrating in the walls. We offered you peace. You mistook it for weakness. You forgot who we are. Now, you remember. A panel on the floor split open. A figure rose from beneath, not robotic, not alien, but human. A Terran Echo commander, clad in matte black. Armor with no insignia, no identifying marks. Just two glowing blue eyes staring from beneath the helmet's visor. The Emperor screamed and fired a plasma bolt. The bolt never reached its target. It curved mid-air, caught in a localized gravity, well emitted from the commander's gauntlet. Casually, the human flicked the bolt aside. Then, with a single motion, raised a rail pistol. "This isn't extermination," the commander said quietly. "This is the end of the lie." One shot. "Clean, no mess." The Emperor fell, the message to the galaxy, but humanity did not stop there. This was never about revenge. This was never about extermination. The Terran Accord broadcast a message on all galactic frequencies, a message that would be remembered for eternity. We are humanity. For 1,000 years we offered peace. For 1,000 years we were builders, teachers, explorers. We gave you the best of ourselves. And when you saw our hands open, you chose to bite. We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. We are not monsters, but make no mistake. We are also not prey. To any who would threaten our worlds, harm our people, or mistake our kindness for weakness, understand this: we do not seek war. But if war comes, we fight it to its end. There will be no second warning. The Vokari homeworld was not glassed. It was not obliterated. Instead, it was disarmed. Their fleets dismantled. Their orbital shipyards stripped down to bare metal. Their war factories burned, but their cities, the ones not used as military strongholds, were spared. Humanity left them there, not as an act of mercy, but as a living reminder. The message spread like wildfire. Across 1,000 star systems, empires reconsidered their strategies. The pirate warlords of the Creole dismantled their fleets voluntarily. The mercenary slavers of the Dran Syndicate fled beyond the Galactic rim. Even the arrogant Scyther Consortium sent envoys, their heads bowed, requesting trade agreements instead of conquest plans. The Terran Accord did not demand tribute. They demanded only respect and the guarantee of peace. But behind every treaty, behind every handshake, was the unmistakable shadow of the Leviathan fleet, now patrolling the dark beyond. Awake, alert, and watching, the phrase spread not as a meme, not as fear-mongering, but as law. The humans remember, and the galaxy would never forget again. Admiral Maravas stood aboard the TDS Final Silence, overlooking the stars. The vast expanse stretched before her, beautiful, peaceful, for now. Around her, the fleet cruised in formation, quiet, engines glowing like blue fireflies against the void. She turned to her officers. "Begin the return protocols. The job is done." An officer raised an eyebrow. "And if they forget again, ma'am?" A slow smile crossed her face. "Then we remind them." The stars blinked. The fleet vanished into folded space. The galaxy held its breath. Peace, true peace, had returned, but this time the stars knew. It was peace backed by the memory of the storm.